a rapidly urbanized cultural metropolis with an estimated population of 20 million people by 2020. Considered by many the New York of Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City's Eastern Foundation collides with contemporary Western influence. On the same street, women in conical hats sell their banh mi. A Circle K provides Western amenities. As in any rapidly urbanized city, Ho Chi Minh City faces many social challenges: homelessness, drug and alcohol abuse, severe poverty, and a growing gap between rich and poor keeps the Socialist Republic of Vietnam anything but equal. Families that are forced to work long hours throughout the day and night face few choices regarding the supervision of their children. Some leave their children with relatives, others under the supervision of neighbors, while some simply leave their children home alone, unsupervised, leaving young girls extremely susceptible to sex abuse. When the parents of 19-year-old Lan divorced, she went to live with a new man her mother became dependent on. Because independent women who work and raise their family alone is still a relatively new phenomenon in Vietnam, many impoverished women rely solely on men for support. Lan and her two sisters, ages 8, 10, and 12 at the time, were raped for a year by their new stepfather with the assistance of their mother. If their mother did not hold them down and assist him, he threatened to beat her or kick her out. Lan's story is not unique and happens all across Vietnam. Hung, currently 18, comes from a poor family who sold lottery tickets. She and 5 of her brothers and sisters shared one loft bed above their parents. When Hung turned 14, each night her father climbed to the loft bed and raped her, while the other children watched. None of the other children said anything to anyone, and if Hung resisted, her father would throw boiling water on her or hit her with a piece of burning wood. For young Trin, her parents were very poor and had to leave her home alone every day while they went to work. Because there was no one around to supervise, her neighbor raped her on a consistent basis for 4 to 5 months. Trin became pregnant from the rapes and was forced to abort the baby before the age of 13.
Thật ra thì để bây giờ có thể nói được chuyện đó là cả một quá trình, và quá trình đó nó rất là lâu dài, thì bây giờ có thể tự nhiên mà nói lên cái câu chuyện đó. Thì cái năm đó thì rất là không may khi mà đã bị xâm hại bởi một người hàng xóm, mà lúc đó thì nói chung là cũng còn nhỏ nữa. Thật sự lúc đó không biết gì hết.
18-year-old Han's 2 years of sex abuse started at the age of 10 when she went to live with her aunt and uncle after her mother died. Han was raped by her uncle for 2 years and was eventually impregnated by him. One day at the market, after feeling very ill, she went to the bathroom and miscarried a baby. She did not understand what was happening to her, and neither did her aunt, so she was brought to a hospital.
Đi lên bệnh viện gia đình, xong rồi người ta mới siêu âm, thì người ta mới hỏi là có ai đã quan hệ với em chưa, thì lúc đầu em nói là em mới giấu, tại vì khi mà ổng làm chuyện đó với em, ổng nói là không có được nói cho ai biết. Thì ổng nói là tại vì ổng cứ mỗi lần mà em làm một cái chuyện gì sai một tí thôi là ổng đánh em rất là sợ. Nhi đồng 2 á, xong rồi lúc đó thì ổng mới vô, ổng mới nói em một lần nữa, ổng nói là đừng nói ai hết, ổng mới nói đừng nói ai hết á. Rồi ổng mới nói là nói cái người mà ở trên trường em á, nói ai đã làm em chuyện đó, ông kêu em nói như vậy. Nhưng mà lúc đó trong lòng em rất là khó chịu, em biết chuyện gì xảy ra.
Han was very frightened when her family came to see her at the hospital, so she lied about what happened.
Xong rồi mấy bác bên nội em vô hỏi thăm em, thì lúc đó em sợ mấy bác em la, với lại mấy bác em cũng nói là tại vì em tự nguyện. Lúc đó em cũng tức lắm. Xong
After the incident, her aunt, the wife of the rapist, moved in with Han and another family member. During the day while the other family member was at work, her aunt would beat her and berate her for what happened with her husband. She spent most of her time on the streets, too afraid to go home. In 2007, the Vietnamese government passed the Law on Domestic Violence Prevention and Control, which came into effect on July 1, 2008. The law legislates the duties of the state, individuals, families, organizations, and institutions in regards to preventing and controlling domestic violence and supporting of its victims. The law also defines what constitutes domestic violence and states that those who perpetuate domestic violence shall either be fined as a civil violation, disciplined, or charged for criminal penalty and have to compensate for any damages caused. However, victims are reluctant to report such cases, and the Vietnamese believe violence to be a private, family-related matter. Despite the law's recent implementation, as of 2008, there were no known cases of spousal rape being prosecuted. Luckily, these 4 girls ended up in a shelter and were rescued from their torment. However, many girls like Han facing this type of abuse run away to the streets, seeing nowhere else to go. Many of these street children come from not just abusive backgrounds, but impoverished backgrounds where little to no education was available to them.
In a poor family where income, of course, is an issue, they're going to have to make a decision. So they're going to have to make a decision. I mean, there's like all sorts of different scenarios. But of course, the first scenario is that you cannot even afford the school fees, which are not huge for a poor family. Let's say $50 a month, $50, $75, whatever, or even $30 extra. It's just impossible. So the kids, even from middle school, a lot of kids are taken out of school. A lot of poor families as well, so domestic violence problems, alcoholism problems, parents who split out and stuff like that, so the kids are sort of like.
On the streets with no education or skills, these children often resort to selling lottery tickets or shining shoes for money. For young girls, prostitution is seen as one of the only viable and lucrative options they have to support themselves. According to local Vietnamese newspapers, official reports from Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Can Tho, and Tiên Giang show that the incidence of younger female sex workers is increasing and that 2% of sex workers are adolescents. There are many types of sex workers in Ho Chi Minh City. Some girls cruise their motorbikes or walk the streets and petition the men they come across. Some work in massage parlors who receive extra tips for going further than a typical massage. Others start in karaoke bars, thinking they have normal waitressing jobs. However, the picture becomes much more complicated once they arrive.
Yeah, sure, you're going to be a waitress in a restaurant, but it's not really a waitress, and it's not really a restaurant. And you sort of basically are being groomed to become a hostess. And at first, they're sort of targeted, like, okay, this one is sort of good looking, she's sort of like this, she's sort of vulnerable, whatever. So they groom them, they put them in debt, right? They say, oh wow, so yeah, you're pretty, you want to go buy some clothes? So the girl's like, wow, somebody's sort of taking care of me and buying me some clothes, and somebody I know, or she makes a lot of friends very quickly, and there's a bunch of older girls, whatever, it's sort of fun, right? And so they buy her a little necklace, they buy her like a nice shirt, earrings, whatever, some makeup, and whatever, right? And then after a couple of weeks they say, well, man, you've been spending a lot of money, so we loan you basically, $200 in clothes and stuff like that, so, so how are you going to pay that back, and that's when the trouble starts.
Managers of the bar start suggesting to the girls at first that they may want to hang out with the customers. Soon, girls are being asked for sex from their customers. After that, the girls go in many different paths.
beat up and raped and stuff like this and then forced to work. Or there's sort of situations of sort of peer pressure, or in some cases a girl says, well, actually I sort of like having money and whatever, and so she doesn't enjoy obviously sort of the activity, but sort of, yeah. But the key point here is that debt is used as a mechanism, and this is a very Southeast Asia wide sort of phenomenon. It's called debt bondage. You find yourself in debt to somebody and therefore you become like a slave to them.
$200 may not seem like a lot, but these girls are deeply impoverished and live day to day. Additionally, they are charged interest on their loans at rates as high as 10% a day. Already groomed under controlling or abusive parents, under this system it is nearly impossible for these vulnerable girls to break out. Many of these girls end up with HIV or AIDS, drug addictions, and many children they are not equipped to take care of. Thus, the cycle of poverty and abuse continues for young girls in Ho Chi Minh City and across Vietnam. Without proper government intervention and sustainable solutions for impoverished and abused girls, sex abuse and prostitution will continue to run rampant across Ho Chi Minh City's historic streets. Girls too afraid and vulnerable to speak about their abuse, and a shame culture prevalent across Asia, keeps most of these horror stories in the dens and bedrooms of twisted families. Without the strength or confidence to speak up, Vietnam's long history of sex abuse and prostitution is likely to continue and become more extreme. In Ho Chi Minh City, Gabrielle Fonrouge.